If you're watching this video, it probably means you're concerned about getting fired. You've noticed some signs, or maybe you have a general feeling that things aren't quite going how they used to, and you want to know, is it possible I might get fired? That way you can get in front of it. In today's video, I'm going to give you several of the signs you need to look for so you can identify, am I at risk of getting fired or am I safe? Let's go. Now, the first thing you want to look for is a lack of feedback from your manager. If you were used to getting feedback on performance, how things are going, maybe you're having reviews, and then all of a sudden they disappear, and you're not getting them anymore, especially if you know they are happening for your other coworkers, that right there I would consider to be a very negative sign. So that is the first thing that you need to watch for. Now, the next thing on my list, and this is a big one, and it is one of those things that you absolutely need to look for, is you start getting emails that seem like documentation. Like, for example, you had a conversation with your boss and your boss is telling you, I need you to turn around this number or this metric, or I need you to improve here. And then 30 minutes later, all of a sudden you get an email and this email says, hello, Ben, per our conversation, I am looking for you to improve this number by this percent by this date. Please confirm receipt of this email. What they are doing right there is they are creating documentation so that when it comes time to let you go, when it comes time to fire you, they can reference these different attempts that they have done to try to get it turned around. It is an essential part of deciding to sever an employee. So if you are noticing that all of a sudden you have conversations and they're followed up by documentation emails, that right there is an incredibly strong sign that you might be getting fired. This one seems obvious, but I want you to listen to all of these and maybe make a check in your head and think, how many of these apply to me? And if you get to the point where 1, 2, 3, 4 or more of them apply to you, that should give you an idea of how concerned you could be. But this next one seems obvious, but you get bad performance reviews. So maybe it's just one, but maybe it's two. If you start to get to the point where you've gotten several negative performance reviews in a row, I would say that it's absolutely a possibility that you might be getting fired, you might be getting let go. Those typically precede somebody getting let go. So if you notice that you get a couple of those in a row, I would absolutely say there's a high chance that that could be in your future. Now, this next one's a little bit more subtle, but it is also very, very important. Let's just say you used to be involved in a lot of meetings about strategy, about planning, about the future, and then all of a sudden, you are no longer invited. There's not an explanation. There's not a change. All the other people who used to be invited are still invited, but you are not. What that should say to you is all of a sudden your position in the organization or in the team has changed. And maybe you're not as much in the loop, you're not a part of the future vision, and you're not a part of the strategic team making the decisions. That shift right there, that change, I would view that as absolutely a little bit of a warning sign. Now imagine you get assignments, right? You get these same assignments over and over and over. Like that's your domain, you were used to it. That is usually you. And then all of a sudden, you no longer get those assignments and they're given to another coworker, or maybe they're given to multiple coworkers. What they're doing right there is they're going, okay, well, you used to do this, we're gonna start giving this to other people. And if there's not like an explanation, if your boss doesn't tell you, hey Ben, just so you know, we're gonna have this person do what? To do this, to free up a little bit of your time, or we want to expand this, we're gonna have you do this instead, which is gonna be growth for you. If there's no explanation and all of a sudden projects you used to get, tasks you used to get are being allocated to other people on your team, that might be a warning sign that you might get fired. Now, this is one that you've got to look for and might be a little bit harder to spot, but it is just as critical. All of your assignments suddenly are short term, right? So maybe there's projects or functions you used to be involved in that were 6, 12, 18-month projects. And all of a sudden, while those projects still exist, everything you are getting is short term. 1-month assignment, 2-month assignment, short things. So instead of being involved in projects that are gonna go well into the future, where your departure might adversely impact the conclusion of that project, they don't have you do that. Instead, everything's short term. So that if they were to move on from you a month from now, 2 months from now, it wouldn't adversely impact the business. That right there might be a little bit harder to spot, but it absolutely might be a sign that you're not gonna be with that organization long term. This is another one that is probably pretty easy to succeed, but it's hard to notice that it might be a sign if you're not thinking about it through that lens. All of your work suddenly becomes much more challenging, almost like it's mission impossible. Like there's no way for me to successfully do this. I think I am being set up for failure. That right there could potentially be a sign that you might get let go. This one's pretty easy, and sometimes people see this and they don't assign the value of it as they should, but it is a clear sign to me, and that is all of a sudden your relationship with your direct supervisor, boss, manager, superior has deteriorated drastically. While you used to connect, you used to meet, all of a sudden it's not there and it seems cold and distant. That right there is a pretty strong sign that you might be getting fired, and you should absolutely watch for it. Now, this one is one that I would absolutely look for and could spell future trouble for you, and that's all of a sudden you're asked to provide a lot more detail on things. Now, this could be on a report or expenses you've had, but you never were in the past, right? Nothing has changed from policy or procedure perspective, but all of a sudden they're asking you specifically, Ben, I need further documentation around this. Ben, could you explain this in detail? And they're asking for a lot of things they wouldn't typically do. That right there could be a sign that you might be getting fired. Now, this is another one that involves your direct manager or superior, but I'm telling you, it is incredibly telling. They go from allowing you to do what you typically would with a fair amount of autonomy to micromanaging everything, doing the details, wanting to know exactly what you're doing. Now, this could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe they no longer trust your work. Or maybe because they plan on severing ties with you, they want to know exactly what is going on within your sphere of responsibility. And because of that, they are like thumb on top of you. They are right there. They are breathing down your neck and they are micromanaging you. And that is not their style. Now, one of the things you might look for here, are they doing that with everybody? Have all of a sudden they're receiving pressure, so they're changing the way they lead because they feel that might allow them to succeed. But if you notice they are micromanaging your work, but all your coworkers have the exact same amount of autonomy and freedom to do their responsibilities, that right there might be a sign that you could get fired. Now, does your job come with perks and different benefits of doing it? Well, imagine suddenly that all of a sudden those perks are no longer coming your way. So maybe there's a conference you plan on attending, but instead, the vast majority of your team is going and attending, but you're not. Or maybe there's some other perk, some other benefit, whatever it is that applies to you, and it's been available, and all of a sudden it's not. And it's not accompanied by a policy change, right? There's not a big sweeping change in the organization in which they say, this is something we will no longer be doing. It's just all of a sudden, this isn't available for you. That right there might be a sign that you could get fired. This one's easy to spot, but I would absolutely look for it. It's lack of praise, lack of positive feedback. So if your boss is someone who's effusive with praise, and they are typically telling people, good job, good work here, this was well done, whatever it is, and all of a sudden, they are no longer saying that to you, right? You don't get that feedback. You don't get that positive feedback, that affirmation, that assurance that you were doing your job and you're doing it well. If all of a sudden that disappears, that could be a sign that you're getting fired, especially if you compare and contrast that with people on your team and they're still getting that praise. That sudden drop off or lack of praise could absolutely be a sign. This one's a little bit harder to look for, but it is absolutely important, and that is sudden lack of access to info or data. It becomes restricted, and there's things you used to be able to see, whether that's just some of the company numbers, or info, or intellectual property, or future plans. And all of a sudden, you just don't get to see that, and there's no communication as to why, there's no explanation. All of a sudden, you just notice that they're really clamping down your ability to see the information you used to be able to see. That right there could be a sign. Now, are you the type of person where they're asking your input, and they're like, hey, Ben, what do you think about this? Or Ben, can I get your feedback on this? If all of a sudden, you're the type of person where they're asking for your input, whether it's on decisions they've made or upcoming decisions or process changes or whatever. If all of a sudden they go from requesting information from you and wanting to know your take on things to never wanting to know your take on things, that right there could be a sign that you might be getting fired. Lastly, this one's gonna seem simple, but I urge you not to ignore it. You have a gut feeling that things are no longer what they were, and you don't feel as secure or as safe in your job. That right there could absolutely be a sign. Sometimes it is really easy to not notice things changing or things that could be a concern to you. But then all of a sudden, you start to feel wary and you become concerned. And all of a sudden, subconsciously, you're picking up on little changes that are your mind's way of telling you, hey, there could be a problem here. I wouldn't ignore that, especially if you go through this list and you notice that there's three or four other things that I've said that also now you're like, yeah, that actually is happening to me. Or, oh, yes, I have noticed that. If that is the case, I would start to prepare for life outside of your current job, because those are signs that you could be getting fired. I'm gonna have another upcoming video on things I would do if all of a sudden I felt like I was going to be letting go, what I would do immediately. So watch for that. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe so you don't miss that. Hit the notification bell so you're notified when it comes out. I make 3 videos a week, all for you, to help you navigate the challenging world that is interviewing in your career. Good luck in your next interview. You got this.